Well, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Emilio Ramos. It's good to be with you. Hey, today on this episode of Red Grace Live, I want to discuss the issue of Islam because it's been a while since we've tackled anything dealing directly with Islam. But I don't want to get too far into the apologetics or the theology of Islam as much as I want to raise awareness regarding what Islam is doing in America. As I've mentioned before on this program, we have been to some degree distracted away from the Islamic influence. Some would say the Islamic invasion, and from things like jihad and radical Islam. And, but as I said before on this program, although we may have been distracted by things like politics or COVID or Trump or whatever, the issue of Islamic influence, immigration, infiltration, and the Islamic uh, sort of migration from different parts of the Middle East into the West has not slowed down. If anything, it has accelerated at an inordinate rate. And I was reminded of the importance of talking about this recently as I made a trip to our local Costco. And as I got out of my vehicle and heading into Costco, I was I was greeted by the call of the minaret. Now, here in North Dallas, we have a major Islamic population, Middle Eastern population, both from the Middle East and from India. Now, a lot of the population that is coming from India, they're coming to places like Texas for specifically for IT jobs and things like that. But a good chunk of that Indian immigration is Muslim and not just Hindu. And so it's important to understand that it's not just Islamic immigration coming from the Middle East, but also coming from India, and of course other parts of the world. But those are the really the big ones. But as I got out of my vehicle, I couldn't believe the first time I had ever heard this here in North Dallas in my neighborhood. The call of the minaret was completely swallowing up the entirety of that plaza, that parking lot. I mean, you can hear it for a mile away easily. And, obviously they're celebrating Ramadan and everything that they're doing. But it's just a reminder of what exactly is happening to America in the way of Islam's continual growth. I think here in Texas, we are nearing a population of about 300,000 Muslims. Texas, for a very long time, I haven't looked at recent statistics on this, but we have been at the very top of mosque construction for a time there. I know for a fact we were leading the nation in mosque construction. So, for people out there, I meet people at different whatever churches or conferences, and over the years living here in Texas, I hear all the jokes about Texas. I mean, recently picking up my good friend, we had breakfast. Emil Zwain, some of you guys know him, Easy. He's the vice president or he is the president of Living Waters now, Ray Comfort's ministry. And he was talking about how everything's bigger in Texas and whatnot. And of course, people have a certain kind of image or picture in their mind when they think about Texas. And typically, what people think about Texas is barbecues or Longhorns or Cowboys or whatever. That image, by the way, is gone. I mean, that image does not exist anymore here in Texas. It has been a long time since we've actually had that image of whatever barbecue culture you think is going on out here. We are, I believe Texas is now at the very pinnacle of things like globalism that is going on in the United States of America, globalist type thinking. I know that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, has made incredible inroads with business leaders in India. So the Indian immigration into Texas is never going to stop at this rate. And the reason why that matters for those of you that don't live here and don't understand, let me just give you a little sample size. again, of what I'm talking about. And let me just say, guys, I've talked about this issue repeatedly. I have been attacked. I have been called a racist. I have been attacked because, well, you're Hispanic or you're Mexican, and what right do you have to talk about immigration? But, honestly, Marco Rubio recently in the news pointed out the immigration of today is nothing like the immigration of the 70s or 80s or 90s. We've entered into a stage now where immigration equals invasion from all over the world, and of course from the southern border. But now I am wanting to champion um, a clarion call for the danger of legal immigration, not illegal immigration. I tell you what, the Muslims that are coming here from around the world are not hopping the border. They're going through the legal processes to get into the country. And when they get into the country, contrary to what many people will think or have been told or are being told by their politicians and such, even as I was recently told by a local politician here in Texas, Matt Sheehan. He tells me that the Muslim and Indian immigrants that are coming here, they're just integrating into the culture. Well, I would dispute that. I would actually argue completely against that. There is no cultural integration going on beyond going to work and buying a Tesla. But beyond that, these folks are building mosques. They're building, Hindu temples. They are displaying idols in their front yard. I mean, this is what's going on. But to give you a sample size of what's happening and the kind of dynamic and the demographic that I'm talking about, in the previous, my wife and I, in the previous community we lived in, we moved into a community of multiple phases, and I forgot what phase we got into, but let's just call it basically phase one, phase two. And let's say phase one consists of about 1,500 or 2,000 homes. And then phase two is another 1,500, 2,000 homes. Where the first phase was essentially a typical kind of what you would expect out of a kind of a neighborhood in a metropolitan area, okay, where you have sort of a mixture of all sorts of different nationalities and whatnot, white, brown, black, Asian, maybe, um, but really a kind of a blend, a mix of ethnicities. Well, phase two takes place, and I can honestly say that phase two consists of about 80%, if not greater, 80% of those homes are Indian, and they are no longer Native Americans, not even close. And so, in talking with this local politician, who became incredibly, not surprisingly, but incredibly defensive about the questions that I was asking regarding legal immigration, globalization, multiculturalism, and those kinds of things. Um, Not only did he become remarkably patronizing, but he was unwilling to even engage in those conversations because he knows that those conversations are not good for politics, not in public view. And I get it. And so I just want to tell you there's a big game going on. There's a big charade going on. And all the while that this game is being played, uh states like Texas and other places, no doubt, think about, you think about Minnesota, you think about what's going on in Michigan, you think about what's going on in California, cities like Diamond Bar, you think about what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan, and in many, many other places of America. There is a radical demographic transformation going on before your very eyes. And I got to tell you, we're not talking about it. We are not talking about it. And so I have a lot to say about this because, like I said, um, here in Texas, Islam is growing at an alarming rate, and it's a difficult thing to address even as a Christian because, for me and for my theology, all of I'm not postmillennial, I'm not a theonomist, I'm not a Christian nationalist, right? Not to say that every principle of Christian nationalism is wrong or anything like that, but to understand that as a reformed Christian that is looking at life in this age, we have dual citizenship. We are citizens of this world, of this earthly kingdom, and we are citizens of heaven. Our true citizenship is in heaven. But as a concerned citizen, even as the Apostle Paul was a concerned citizen of Rome, and at times needed to tap into his earthly citizenship in order to get certain points across or to raise certain concerns and stress certain fundamental rights that he had. In the same way, we need to also be extremely wise and circumspect. We need to be remarkably engaged, I believe, in both citizenships, never losing sight of our ultimate citizenship. Of course, the state will never make up our identity. Our identity is in Christ, and our ultimate allegiance is to Christ and to His lordship and to His word. But in this world, you're going to have to interact as a dual citizen. You're going to have to act responsibly. You're going to have to engage, and so for a certain level of engagement, I think that the way that things have developed at this point, I don't think it's possible for Christians to truly meaningfully engage in today's cultural moment without also engaging in a fair amount of activism to some degree, to get involved, to voice our opinion. And by the way, you all do this. If you vote, that's what you're doing. You're voicing your opinion. You're voting for something that is not of the spiritual kingdom of Christ necessarily. Every time you cast a vote, you are saying something. And so, as an extension of that, we need to let our voice be heard in other areas and other spheres of this common earthly citizenship that we share with the rest of humanity. It's just common sense. It you don't need an elaborate theology to go along with it. And I think that's where theonomy and errors like that have gotten in trouble, is that they have gone to the extent of essentially looking at things univocally, as if there are no dual citizenship, as if what Paul was talking about there in Philippians 3, that there is no dual citizenship between heaven and earth. And of course there is. And so, but getting back to what is happening here in Texas and why this matters evangelistically as well as politically and socially and sociologically and everything else, culturally speaking, when you look at what Islam is doing, you all you need to do is look on social media, look on X, look on Facebook for people that are raising the alarm of what is happening in Texas before our very eyes, as large swaths of Islamic communities are popping up all over the place. And to give you one example, not far from here, there is the Epic City project going on in kind of northern, kind of heading more towards eastern Texas. They are creating a master planned community of Islamic sort of concentrated populations, enterprises. They are basically creating an Islamic city in Texas, and it's not the only one. There are now others popping up where they buy hundreds and thousands of acres of land out in the middle of what we would call nowhere, but rural Texas. And they are building entire cities and communities there, uh, all centered around a mosque. And so, I mean, I want you to just think about that. They're creating a Muslim city right in front of you, where uh, in this area, they're literally all the street names and all the neighborhoods are being uh, they're following Islamic names, Arabic names, and it is a radical transformation of what's going on now. From a Christian apologetics perspective, understand that what you're witnessing there is jihad. And I've covered this on multiple occasions, but a basic a basic philosophy of jihad, as articulated by people like Zaid Qutb and others, following the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, and exposited in the tafsirs, the different commentaries and such of the Quran, and of the life of Muhammad, uh, Jihad follows three simple guidelines: immigration, infiltration, domination. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. We are witnessing a slow creeping infiltration, immigration infiltration, and that's the stage that we are in right now. We are in my opinion, we're in kind of the middle of an immigration procedure process, that is only going to increase. Democracy is has its limits. Democracy cannot protect us from this. They use our very laws against us, in a sense, if I can say us, in terms of our nation, whatever nation we belong to. If you're democratic, they use the immigration policies and laws to their advantage. And if you want to fast forward, if you want to jump into the time capsule, just look at what is going on in the EU. Just look at what is going on in Europe. Just look at what's happening in London, what's happening in places like Sweden, and places like Ireland, and places like Germany, where the multicultural agenda, the globalism agenda, has just uh, it's been going on for so long that now you have full-throated Islamic no-go zones, areas of the country you, as a non-Muslim, l- really can't visit. You can't really go and just walk around in the evening and and just take a nice stroll at night through certain neighborhoods. It's not safe, and all you need to do is look at social media, just jump on X and just look at the many pages that are on there that are showing video after video after video after video of violent crime, of women, elderly people, children being assaulted, being beaten. Um, and of course, we know that there is a massive rape epidemic going on in Europe that all the governments are trying to cover up, and that there's this constant struggle going back and forth. And all of this comes from an agenda, and that agenda is globalization. That agenda is multiculturalism. That agenda is to see Western ideals, Western culture, Judeo-Christian ethics, Judeo-Christian cosmology be taken out and be replaced by an Islamic and globalist kind of ideology. And it's happening. I mean, just recently, the mayor of London, I tell you, you walked into London on Ramadan and you would have thought you were living in you would think you were in the Middle East. You're not in a European country at that point. The entire city was decorated in Islamic festivities and Islamic symbolism, and it's all of this is part of the greater doctrine of jihad. Make no mistake about it whatsoever. They are following the example of Muhammad. They are following the dictates of the Quran, of the Sunnah, of the tafsirs, of the very example that they see in the life of Muhammad. Ibn Ishaq and or Ibn Hisham, whatever's left of that actual writing of the life of Muhammad. This is exactly what's going on. And I'll be honest with you, guys, I haven't seriously studied Islam in a long time. There were years in my life where I dedicated myself to the study of Islam. Um, I read everything I can get my hands on as far as Islamic apologetics goes. And then I decided to press pause on all of that and focus on other things, mainly theology. But I tell you, with what I saw this week, the call of the minaret now sounding loud and clear in Dallas, Texas, out in the open, with the population and the demographic development of what's going on, of the fact that our supposed conservative leaders here in Texas are completely ignoring, minimizing, they are ignoring people, in fact, that are reaching out to them and trying to sound the alarm on this issue. They are being patronizing, they are condescending, they refuse to talk about this issue in public. even though Greg Abbott has said that Sharia law will never be the law of the land. Well, I got news for you. It already is in these Islamic communities. They already have their own unspoken sort of rollout of Sharia among themselves. Okay. And when projects like Epic City and other, you know, cities that are engineered and designed around Islam. Everything is centered upon some big mosque project where they have an Islamic school, K through 12, basically, in Irving, Texas, right down the street from the Cowboy Stadium. I've been to this mosque. I've talked to the imam. And I can tell you, when you're there in Irving at the mosque in Irving, you do not feel like you're in America at all. Even when you go to the surrounding shops, even when you go with the Walmart across the street, you are greatly outnumbered. You do not feel like you're in America. You feel like you are in a foreign country. And it's a dangerous conversation because you begin to talk like this and you are immediately labeled a racist, a xenophobe, whatever. But I got to tell you, everything has changed. And for people that don't understand, don't believe this, don't resonate with this, I would just invite you to go to a local college, just a community college. Go to a community college in Richardson, Texas, Addison, Texas. Just go down to Plano and now go to Frisco, and you will recognize very, very quickly that you are watching the systematic transformation of Texas, and you are watching the native population of Texans being systematically replaced, and our so-called conservative politicians are doing little to nothing to stop it. And again, all you need to do is look at the European Union. All you got to do is go and see what is happening there. And if you don't think this is going to happen here, I got news for you. It's already happened. There are already areas of New York and New Jersey. There's already areas in Dearborn, Michigan. There's already areas in Minneapolis, for example. There's already areas in California, like Diamond Bar, California, which is probably somewhere around 30 or 40% Muslim already, where this is absolutely happening. It's coming. We've been warned. It became almost a subject that we got tired of because every Christian, leader, apologist, what have you, after 9/11, everybody was writing their book on jihad, presenting their sermons and their lessons on jihad and Islam and what is Islam, and Norm Geisler and James White and all these different Jay Smith and all of these different folks, Acts 17 apologetics and all of that was happening. And I think we got so tired of hearing about it that we started little by little wanting to focus on other things because we recognize, well, Islamic Jihad, all of this is coming, the Islamic invasion. Robert Morey, for those of you that are familiar with Robert Morey, he was quite a character, but he was a very, very intelligent scholar, and he wrote the Islamic invasion a long time ago, a long over 20, 30 years ago now. He wrote that book, and it has proven to be 100% correct. And so we have to give credit wherever it's due. And so I just believe that as a church, um, we need to be kind of woken up again. It's kind of like we can't wait for another 9/11 moment to take place. We need to wake up now, and we need to awaken to the fact that um, you know Islam, as dark as it is, and sometimes as powerless and kind of overwhelmed as we may feel, we have to educate the church, and especially we need to educate the future generation. Uh, but as long as the church remains materialistic, carnal, man-centered, as long as our leaders remain spineless and don't want to speak out on this, where your typical evangelical mega church doesn't want to accept doesn't want to upset anybody. It doesn't want to make anybody alarmed or fearful. And honestly, if we continue to be afraid of putting truth in front of our people, for fear that we're going to scare people off, for fear that our church, oh no, our church is not going to grow. But we continue to tailor everything towards this sort of consumer driven, where everything is about you as a consumer, as an attendee of a church, where everything is tailored around your experience and your kids, whether or not your kids are having enough fun at church. As long as we maintain this amusement park culture in the church and all of the theatrics that go along with this, the future generation is going to be ill equipped to even know what to do with this issue, because I'm telling you, it is a tidal wave. And so it is something that we need to refocus our attention on. And so, definitely more episodes on this issue of Islamic theology, Islamic jihad, and what is going on here. But if we continue to cultivate the current evangelical culture of celebrityism and stroking our own egos, okay, making heroes out of expositors, perfecting our Christian concerts until we have that perfect studio Sony quality, okay, focusing more on trying to win some kind of Dove Award rather than equipping the church, waking up the church, and having a militant understanding of the Christian life in this world, that we are in a spiritual battle, that we have to equip people like their life depends on it, because it does. And because we can no longer just sit around with these kind of man-centered goals and fail to equip the church. And so I tell you, when I think of what's going on in Europe, you can see it all over social media. You can see video after video after video on X, for example, where people are uh, being assaulted in public. They have all of these, quote unquote, asylum seekers coming over from Africa and from all over the place, and just engaging in utter lawlessness. I mean, stabbings every day. Every day, people are out there stabbing people in Europe because somebody just decided to, you know, uh, decided to go on a jihad rampage of some kind. It is really dire, and you tend to think, and you can even see it on social media. People bring it up. How much do these people have to hate their children to allow this to happen in their nation, in their country? And we know that there are countries out there that won't tolerate this kind of thing. Poland is an example of a nation with essentially zero immigration. And you know what they have? They have zero terrorism whatsoever. They have no jihad, they have no terrorism, they have no riots, and they have no stabbings going on. And that's because they have a common sense, robust immigration policy in place. And so, again, this is something that we I'm going to have to now focus on again. And I'm not happy to do it. It brings me personally no joy. I don't enjoy studying the Quran. I don't enjoy studying the Hadith. I don't enjoy studying the theology of Islam. But for the sake of equipping the church, I don't think I have a choice at this point. And so I think that when we talk about the new apologetics, I've talked about this time and time again. When we talked about the new apologetics, if you remember, it's not just a focus on AI, technology, transhumanism, those kinds of things. But part of the new apologetics was that we also talk about globalization, globalism. We talk about uh, uh, how globalism necessarily uh, produces pluralism, and pluralism introduces paganism, and paganism introduces this clashing of societies, this total cultural deconstruction that we see going on. Not cultural integration, but cultural disintegration. And that's what's happening in Europe before our very eyes, and that's what can happen right here in Texas, the buckle on the Bible Belt, as they call it, as Islamic immigration continues to thrive and our leaders do little to nothing to uh, to stave off the radical effects of large portions of the population being Islamic and replacing the native population of wherever you're from. That's what's happening. And so I remember growing up in Orange County, California. I remember growing up in cities like Huntington Beach and Fountain Valley and Westminster. And I remember watching in the 80s, I remember watching the Vietnamese population take over entire towns, entire neighborhoods, eventually entire cities. Little Saigon was built when I was there. They built Little Saigon, where it began as just a couple shops, couple shopping malls, couple stores, and then the next thing you know, the entire neighborhood is Vietnamese, and 90% of the storefronts you can't read because it's all in Vietnamese language. It's unbelievable. And something like that, I believe, is happening right now. But the difference is that it is attended by Islam, a a false religion that comes with it, and that is antagonistic, that is hostile, and that is ultimately diametrically opposed to biblical Christianity. And so I would say if you live in Texas and you're a Christian, uh, reach out to your local politicians, reach out to your local representatives. Talking to a friend the other day, he's done exactly that. He's reached out to these people consistently for years. That kind of engagement as Christians, we have to now kick that into high gear. And we need to do it now. I would say we're not in the early stages anymore. We are much further along. I mean, good night. We've got Islamic cities going up in Texas. We're not at the beginning stages of this anymore. And so we need to be absolutely willing to engage in that level of activism because it's going to affect everybody, Christian or non-Christian alike. It doesn't matter. And so I hope that at least we raise awareness on this issue, that we equip the church, and that we get ready to engage the Muslim population because it's only going to increase. It's only going to get bigger and stronger and louder, and only going to have much more of a cultural impact. And we have to be ready, and we need to respond. And ultimately, our response is through the gospel. Politics is one thing. Activism is one thing. Those kinds of things, they can do some good, maybe at a common grace level. But ultimately, we know that we have to engage the Muslim community with the gospel of Jesus Christ because that's their only hope. So I hope you guys appreciated that. Make sure and share and subscribe to the channel. Till next time, God bless.